All right. Well, we have a good number of people online now, and we are at 11:31. So we will get started. So once again, to everyone who's here with us live and who will be viewing the recording, welcome to our webinar called Paying for Graduate School, Understanding Costs and Funding Options. So lots of things that we'll get into today, and we will get started. So just to introduce myself and my colleague, my name is Carrie Huber, and I'm the manager of graduate marketing and recruitment here with Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs at the University of Waterloo. And joining me today is my colleague Heidi Musser. She's our associate director of graduate financial aid and awards. So she is our specialist with everything to do with scholarships and funding, and she has lots of great info to share with you. Now, before we jump in, just a couple quick housekeeping notes. As I mentioned, this session is being recorded. So anyone who signed up, you'll get an email 1 to 2 days after with the recording. So don't worry if you miss anything or want to go back, the recording will be shared. If you have questions that come up, please use the Q&A function at the bottom. You can see the little Q&A box. Try to maybe wait until we get a little ways into the webinar because it may be that your question is answered as we're going along. But if you have one, feel free to put it in the question box, or you can wait till we get to the Q&A portion. And we're going to try and leave enough time so we can get to as many questions as we can. So I'd also like to recognize that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is the land promised to the Six Nations, and it includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. And if you look at the image here, we actually recently opened a new Indigenous outdoor gathering space here on campus. It's a representation of the continuous presence of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit on this territory. And it's meant to teach, celebrate, gather, a good spot just for hanging out, and can be used for classroom space. So that's one of our newest initiatives here on campus. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to try and get through a bunch of topics around funding. We'll briefly go over the different types of graduate programs that we offer here at Waterloo. Then Heidi will talk about funding packages and internal funding, external awards. She'll talk about specific funding based on financial need. She'll also go through how funding is paid, because there can be some sort of complexities around that a little bit. And then I'll talk a bit about our tuition and fees, some government financial requirements for international students, and some other costs and expenses to consider. And then we will get into the Q&A after that. So here at Waterloo, we have a couple different kinds of graduate programs, which you may be aware of already, but just to explain them a little bit. So we have research-based and course-based programs. So research-based programs, this is research-based master's or PhD programs. They can often be completed part-time as well. But sometimes that will change. If you are doing a research program part-time, that can change your funding eligibility. But we may talk about that. That will come up a little bit later, but typically research programs do offer funding for full-time programs, which Heidi will talk about a little bit more. And we also offer graduate diplomas. Those aren't listed here, but typically our largest sections of programs are the research-based and the course-based programs. So of course, with course-based programs, you are doing primarily coursework as opposed to doing research. And if you're doing a coursework program full-time, those can often be completed in a year, whereas the research-based master's programs will typically be a couple of years. So that's sort of the basic differences between those two types of programs. So I will turn it over to Heidi now, who will go over what the different funding packages are available according to the type of program that you're in.
Great. Thanks, Carrie, very much for that intro. And hi, everybody. Happy to be here just talking about different funding opportunities to support a graduate program. At Waterloo, base funding packages are provided to eligible students in research-based programs And now, while practices can vary across the faculties, full-time research master's students regularly receive financial support, providing they are within time limits of the program. To recognize the doctoral programs require a significant time commitment, which is typically 12 terms of full-time study, and recognizing that these students are making substantial contributions to the university's research mission, minimum base funding is provided to full-time PhD students who are within term limits and in good academic standing. As of May 1st, 2025, so this current fiscal year, the minimum base funding for students in a PhD program is just over $28,000 for up to 4 years, or term 12 of the program. This university base level funding is reviewed annually, and any increases to the minimum apply to both new and current students in the program. Many programs do give more than this base funding, details of which would be included in your formal offer of admission letter. The funding provided to you will normally be comprised of internal awards that do not require a specific award application. Departments have operating budgets available, and they automatically select recipients based on specific award criteria. It can also be comprised of a teaching assistantship or research assistantship, as well as graduate research studentships or GRSs. Additionally, funding is also available through donor-funded support that you might be eligible for either automatically or through the completion of an award application. It's important to note that while you may be provided with a funding package, any funding that you receive is always applied first to your tuition and fees. Any credit remaining is then released to you as a refund and is meant to then supplement any other personal funding you have towards your living expenses. Students who are registered in course-based programs, so those would be your master's programs, are generally considered self-funded. Although some programs do offer some small entrance awards, funding for these programs from institutional operating or research funds is normally not offered. So if you're interested in other funding opportunities, you can check out other funding options that I'm going to be speaking to you about a little bit later in the presentation. So next slide, Carrie. So just elaborating a bit on the previous slide, some awards that do not require a specific application include the ones that are listed here. So the UW Graduate Scholarship, the International Master's Award of Excellence, and the International Doctoral Student Award, as well as GRS, so the Graduate Research Studentship. Other than the IDSA, the other examples are ones that are initiated by your graduate department or supervisor, who automatically select recipients based on the specific award eligibility criteria. Now, TAs and RAs are considered salary because the work that's being done is to support faculty members with instructional or research duties that are beyond the scope of a student's own research. Generally, TAs and RAs are part of one's minimum funding package, and if declined, are not replaced with other funding. So that's important to keep in mind if you are offered one. A key difference between a scholarship and a TA or RA is that scholarships are paid once during the term, while the TA and RA are paid monthly at the end of each month. So that needs to be kept in mind when you are budgeting your finances. Next slide. Sorry. Yep. Thanks, Carrie. There are various needs-based supports available for students in financial situations. So the contingency bursary is specifically for international students who are registered full-time in their program who have extenuating circumstances that have impacted their funding since being admitted to the program. It's not normally given to students who are in the first year of their program, and there are limits and maximums as to the number of times a student can receive this bursary. The domestic bursary program is managed by our colleagues in Student Awards and Financial Aid. They are a team within the registrar's office. And for this program, it is required that students first apply and qualify for OSAP or a provincial student loan. Assessments for either of these are done based on a specific award application that includes a budget showing your income versus expenses for the term. You would also include a written explanation of your circumstances, as well as a financial plan for how you're going to support your future terms and any receipts for unexpected expenses incurred. These programs offer some short-term financial assistance for education and reasonable living costs, and they act as a supplement to your own personal financial resources. A parental leave bursary may also be an option for students who go inactive for parental leave reasons. This bursary offers up to 2 terms worth of financial support to eligible grad students who become parents through birth or adoption and decide to take a parental leave. And on average, we support approximately 30 students per year with this program. For students who need to go inactive for medical reasons, we also have a medical leave award of up to $5,000 available. In order to qualify for this, students need to have been in a research-based program for at least 1 academic term and have been receiving a financial package from their department immediately prior to going inactive. All medical leave documentation is provided to accessibility services and remains confidential. Next slide, please. Most of our grad programs are eligible for funding from the Ontario Student Assistance Program, or OSAP, a provincial government funded program available to all Ontario residents that provides grants and loans of varying amounts to support post-secondary education. Most other provinces in Canada also have a student loan program available. International students may find some options through a company called Empower Financing. This is a public benefit corporation that offers loans to students who cannot typically qualify for a loan from other banks or lenders unless they have a co-signer or some collateral to support the loan application. There's also the option of private bank loans or student lines of credit. These are primarily for Canadian students and permanent residents, but there may be limited options that can work for some international students. As mentioned, bursaries are also available from Waterloo, but there is a limited budget available and are only meant to supplement other income that you already have. And then in the top right corner of the slide, and I think a link is going to be put in the chat, we also have a few databases referenced on our website that you might want to refer to for other opportunities. One is an internally managed graduate awards database where we post all awards that Waterloo is administratively involved in, from the collection of applications to selection of recipients and payment of awards. This database acts as a search engine where you can select specific fields to narrow down the results that you get. And then there are others that are external databases that we post on our website that include opportunities that are available through external firms or agencies. So I encourage you to take a look through those links and see if there's any opportunities that will satisfy your requirements and for which you might be eligible. There are a couple of competitive scholarship programs I just want to highlight in the next couple of slides that are supported through the federal and provincial governments. These competitions occur annually in the fall and winter terms, with advertising starting as early as July. Deadlines for these vary depending on the competition, and results get released the following spring. So you're applying now, like you're usually applying about 6 months in advance of when the results come out. The scholarships range in value from $15,000 to $40,000 per year, and depending on the competition, applications go through several reviews, including at the department, faculty, and institutional levels. Even though you may already be receiving a funding package from your department to support your studies, we strongly encourage you to apply if you meet the eligibility criteria. These scholarships are meritorious, and being successful can demonstrate to fellow academics and employers how competitive you are if you have this on your CV. Because these are considered external scholarships, you are not automatically considered for these. You have to specifically apply for them in the competition cycle. For these competitions, successful recipients often have averages in the mid to high 80s and higher, of course, but your success can depend on a variety of qualities beyond just grades. Reviewers look at the research proposal or statement of interest, referee assessments. So normally at least 2 letters of reference are required to support these applications. They also look at leadership skills, any contributions or publications that you've had during your post-secondary education, and any other meritorious scholarships you've held while in an undergraduate or graduate program. So they take all of that into consideration to see how competitive your whole package is. And finally, if you are successful in receiving one of the core tri-agency or OGS scholarships, you will also receive a President's Graduate Scholarship of up to $10,000 if you hold the scholarship at Waterloo. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to take a few moments to elaborate more on 2 of these scholarships, as the deadlines have not yet passed and you might still have a chance to apply. So the first is the tri-agency master's level funding, which is referred to as the Canada Graduate Research Scholarship Masters, or the CGRSM. It's valued at $27,000 per year, and it is only for 1 year. It's only available for domestic students who are in a program that is predominantly research oriented. So in other words, your graduate program has to lead to the completion of either a thesis or a major research project. The deadline to apply is December 1st, and for this competition, institutions are provided with quotas for each of the agencies. So there's CIHR, which is health, NSERC, which is your STEM disciplines, and SSHRC, which is the social sciences and humanities. So we receive a quota for each of those agencies, and then the adjudication and final selection resides at the institutional level. Students can identify a maximum of 3 institutions where they would like their application considered for this. So your application could technically be considered at, Waterloo, Toronto, and UBC. It all depends on what your plans are for grad school. The results get released April 1st, and students can start holding their scholarship as early as the spring term following the announcement of results, or as late as the following winter term. So there is some flexibility with when you can start holding the scholarship. And on the right-hand side of the screen are just some numbers from last year's competition, just to show you what our quotas were, as well as the number of applications that we received. And then in the right-hand column, I'm just showing you the quotas for this year's competition. So we can see that the numbers haven't changed very much at all, only in fact for NSERC, where our quota increased by 1. And obviously the number of applications we don't know yet because the deadline is December 1st. The major provincial scholarship we manage the competition for is the Ontario Graduate Scholarship, or OGS, and its close counterpart, the Queen Elizabeth II Graduate Scholarship in Science and Technology, or the QE2, as we affectionately refer to it as. There is a single application form, and depending on your eligibility, you will be considered for either an OGS or the QE2. The one thing to keep in mind is the QE2 is only available for domestic students, whereas the OGS is available for domestic and international students. The scholarship is valued at $5,000 per term for up to 3 terms. And both doctoral and master's students may apply. If you are in a course-based master's program, you can apply, but your application must still demonstrate evidence of research ability as this is one of the criteria that is used to evaluate the strength of the application. And you can find more details about this on our website. For this scholarship, you apply through the institution where you want to hold it. So if you're currently in an undergrad program and are thinking of going into a grad program at a different Ontario institution next year, you need to apply for that OGS through that institution and follow their application process and deadline. There is no provincial adjudication. Recipients are selected by the institution where they submitted an application. So somewhat similar to the CGRSM, you can submit more than one application for the OGS if you're not sure which school you're going to be going to for your graduate program. Now, OGS is only Ontario, so you can only apply for this at an Ontario institution. But again, you need to keep in mind that if you are thinking of applying to multiple universities in Ontario, you need to find out what their application process and deadline is, because each of us have different application forms and different processes. At Waterloo, our institutional quota gets distributed to the faculties who make final selection, with eligibility verified by my team here in Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. As you can see, for the 25-26 competition in the table on the right, we received approximately 1,000 applications for a total of 203 awards. And of the 1,000 applications, approximately 100 were from international students, of which we have a quota of 5 that can be awarded. So the volume of applications is significant compared to the number of awards we can actually give, but it's a really good experience to go through the process anyway, and we encourage you to apply if you're eligible. Normally, eligible students will apply for both the tri-agency and the OGS or QEII scholarship, but if they're successful, they can only accept one. So if you meet the eligibility criteria for both, please consider applying for both. Now, unless you make a bank payment to cover your tuition and fees in full, scholarships, which are paid on a term-by-term basis, are first applied to your tuition and fees, which I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. If there is a credit balance on your account, then a refund is released to you, which you may use to supplement any other personal financial resources you have towards living expenses. And the credit that you will receive is deposited into a Canadian bank account that you will identify against your Quest account. Graduate TAs and RAs, as well as sessional teaching appointments at Waterloo, are considered employment income and are subject to statutory deductions for income tax, Canada Pension Plan contributions, and employment insurance premiums. Payments for these are processed by the Human Resources Payroll Department and are made by direct deposit to your bank account. They're paid in monthly installments, and you are welcome to set up a payment plan with Student Financial Services that will deduct a portion of your monthly TA or RA payments and apply them to your tuition and fees. And finally, there are various reasons that can impact any funding you receive, and this can include any changes to your enrollment status. So if you change from a full-time student to a part-time student, or you go inactive or withdraw, those can all impact the funding that you've been getting. If you change your immigration status, so if you become a permanent resident of Canada and you were receiving an International Doctoral Student Award, any future installments of that award will be canceled. Any changes in funding. So if you receive certain major awards, any department or institutional funding might be adjusted, but not less than what you were originally offered in your offer of admission. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Carrie, who's going to wrap things up with a few more details on tuition, government requirements, and other costs you need to consider when applying to grad school. Thanks, Carrie.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Heidi, for taking us through. I know there's lots of details in there, so if you had any questions come up while Heidi was going through that, please use the Q&A. I see we have some coming in already, so that's great. Um, I just wanted to chat briefly about our tuition and fees and just go into a few more details about that. So at the beginning, we were talking about how there's different types of programs, the research-based programs and the course-based programs, and then, of course, master's and PhD. So your tuition is going to be dependent on the type of program that you're in, again, research-based or course-based, and then also the type of student you are. So for example, we have 3 different types of students or classifications of students here at Waterloo. We have domestic students who live in Ontario. So those are residents of Ontario. Domestic out of province, so anyone who's a domestic student, but anywhere else in Canada, and then international students, and that's anybody who is not either a citizen or a permanent resident of Canada. So domestic tuition also counts if you're a permanent resident. So to find out tuition, you're going to go to the tuition and fees page on our Future Students website, which I think will get posted into the chat. And then that will take you to the grad tuition page on the finance website, where then you can go through and choose your residency. So if you're a citizen or an international student or within Ontario, and then you just you look for your type of program and then the program that corresponds in the chart there. It's usually pretty easy to navigate. And those are all for this current fall's tuition fees. Normally tuition is not charged. Tuition fees won't be posted until a lot closer to the start of fall term. So you won't see fees up there for fall 2026 yet. So just be aware of that. Finance also does offer a tuition fee estimator. So if you need to apply, so for any international students who are going to need to be applying for a study permit, or if you need to pay your fees in advance, and you need to show proof of payment for your study permit application, you use the tuition fee estimator on the finance website, and that will be enough for your study permit. So tuition fees also are charged, they're charged per term. So instead of being charged for a full year, you're charged on a termly basis, which is a period of 4 months. So we have fall, winter, and spring terms. And that will be approximately 1 month before the start of classes each term. So if you get accepted, like you do your application in February, say you get accepted as early as March, your fees won't actually be posted, your tuition and fees to your account until about a month before. So don't stress out. Don't stress out about that, because those will not be there right away. And then there will be a deadline. So we have something called the fees arranged deadline. So that means at a certain point in the term, you have to have your tuition paid, or a note that says like how you're going to pay your tuition. And so that needs to be done by a certain point in the term, and that's in our important dates calendar. So we'll put that into the chat as well. Yeah, I think that covers that. So I was just talking about study permits for our international applicants. So I just also wanted to touch really briefly on the financial requirements that are needed to obtain a study permit here in Canada. So there have always been financial requirements to obtain a study permit, but recently they've been increased to reflect the current cost of living in Canada. So you must be able to demonstrate that you can cover your first year of tuition plus an additional amount of money that's listed here, depending on if it's just you or other family members is coming as well. So if it's just you have to demonstrate. So using that tuition fee estimator that I was just mentioning, you would show like what your annual tuition is. And then if you have funding as well that covers that, that shows that you are paying that. But then you have to be able to show that you have an additional $20,635 on top of your tuition for the year to be able to be approved for a study permit. So that's just something to keep in mind as you go through the process. But also want to say it's the number one important thing to focus on first is getting an offer of admission. So don't worry about your study permit stuff right now. At this point in time, worry about doing your application, getting an offer of admission. And then once you get an offer of admission, we have immigration consultants that you are able to meet with, and you can do like online chats with, and they do video sessions as well. So we do have lots of resources and supports once you get that acceptance, but just wanted to make sure that our international applicants were aware of this. So I also wanted to touch a bit briefly on some of the other costs that you might want to consider. So on top of tuition, of course, you have to consider your housing and living costs. So we do have on-campus housing for graduate students here at Waterloo, but it's not, we don't have enough space for every single graduate student. So sometimes our graduate students do have to look for off-campus housing as well. So again, I was talking about focusing on getting that offer of admission. So then once you do get that offer of admission, it's important to then start looking into housing options right away. So sort of in that March, April time period. Often you're going to be able to apply for on-campus housing during that time. Applications will traditionally open or typically open in March. But then if you're considering off-campus housing, we do have a bunch of different resources for that, but considering whether you want to be living alone or with others, how close to the university you're living, how close to transit you are. So we do have some resources on our living costs and housing page that are a really good place to start if you're just wanting to get an idea of expenses, and then also one-time expenses, things like, do you need a new computer when you're coming? Do you need a winter jacket? Do you need winter boots? Are you coming from a country where it isn't that cold in the winter, and you're going to have one-time expenses for different seasons and stuff here in Canada? So that's a great starting place to get an idea of those costs. And I know Heidi was talking before about the minimum funding available for PhD students and what that covers. So it can help you. We just want to note that while that can help you offset your costs, that funding that you receive, that minimum funding, is not meant to cover all of your costs. So especially for our international students, where you have to, again, show that that minimum amount is going to be over and above your tuition fees. You are going to want to make sure that you do have some other source of income as well, other than just your minimum funding, because it's also important to be able to cover other expenses that come up as well. All right, so we will flip over to our Q&A session, and I have my email up on the screen there. So if there are things that we don't get to, or if you have other questions, you can reach out to me, then I will direct you where you need to go. So Heidi, I will start off. There is just a question about what particular funding for international students and research programs and what's available for them.
Yeah, so it all depends on the program, master's or doctoral, but as I mentioned, research-based master's programs typically offer funding. If you are going to be in a doctoral program, international students will, as long as they fall within certain parameters, they will automatically receive an International Doctoral Student Award, which basically reduces the tuition down to that of a domestic student. And again, I'm not going to get into all of the logistics about that. There's a lot of details on our website about that program. But yes, then if you are in a research-based master's program, whether you are international or domestic, you would get some funding, unless you have applied as a self-funded student. But no, normally you would be getting funding.
Great, thanks, Heidi. There's been a couple notes just from people concerned about getting email responses from potential supervisors. So just want to address that really quickly. Professors and supervisors are often, they get hundreds and hundreds of emails from prospective students. So if they don't get back to you, that it's not necessarily personal, but what I can say is that you want to make sure that you are as specific as possible when you're emailing them, making sure that you stand out, that you're sending all of the appropriate information, that you're aligning the work that you do with the work that they're doing, because you have to sort of think of it on the other side, right? If they're getting hundreds of emails, you need to be able to stand out to them and and rather than just sort of sending a non-specific note. And that's going to increase your chances. So that's really the best advice I can give there. There's someone asking, Heidi, are there scholarships that are based on your GRE score?
There might be some programs. I know some programs do take GRE scores into consideration when they are looking at applications for admission. But generally, scholarships are based on your academic average of your previous degree. So either a completed undergrad degree or a completed master's degree, not the GRE scores.
Thanks, Heidi. So this is a question of if someone's a permanent resident, are they eligible for scholarships? Which would be yes, because as a permanent resident, you're essentially like you're a domestic student. I don't know if there's anything you want to add there, Heidi, but
no, they're
yep.
considered the same as a Canadian citizen. So any scholarships that a domestic student would be eligible for, then a permanent resident is eligible for that.
Yep. I've had a couple questions about application fee waivers, which unfortunately we do not offer application fee waivers. So you do have to pay that application fee. And someone asking about funding in Masters for Mathematics. If it's a research-based program, then yes, there will be. Heidi, do you know what the minimum funding is for the MMath research programs?
Yeah, I don't. And each program, they offer their own funding packages and it's comprised of different things. And it's best to just reach out to the admin of the department that you're specifically interested in, just to know what their funding is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Heidi. Someone's asking about minimum funding offered for PhD international students, if it's sufficient to live in Canada or they need to find extra funding. As I just mentioned at the end there, you will want to have additional funding. And in fact, you do need that additional $20,635 on top of that to get your study permit. So yes, you do. Also question, they weren't sure if the funding earned from a TA or RA is included in the minimum funding for PhD students or if it's extra on top of their minimum funding.
It's usually part of minimum funding, unless an opportunity comes up where it's like they have a class that has a vacancy or a TA suddenly is not able to fulfill all of the requirements, they have to withdraw or whatever the circumstances are, and then you have to pick up, there's an opportunity for you to pick up another half TA, then that might be above and beyond the minimum funding, but most times it is part of minimum funding.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. Someone's asking, for scholarship applications, should they do that before they're offered admission or after?
It can be either. The programs that I spoke to today about the CGRSM and the OGS, like a lot of students are applying while they are still in their undergrad, because they want funding when they start their program, even though they might be offered minimum funding package, they're still applying for these in advance just because it can be additional support. You earned this funding on your own merit. So it's not a requirement, but it's certainly something that you should be considering seriously if you're eligible.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks, Heidi. Someone's asking, they're an international student, they're interested in applying for the Master of Climate Change, particularly research-based. So actually, the Master of Climate Change is not a research-based program. That is a course-based program. And you can do it part-time. And the Master of Climate Change is an in-person program. So it's a coursework one. There's no research. So that would be it's not a research-based program, so that would be a self-funded program. So you wouldn't be eligible for funding for the Master of Climate Change as an international student, other than potentially very specific scholarships. And there is a part-time version, but it is not a research-based program, unfortunately. Internship programs. Someone just asked about internship programs. Anytime you're looking at our programs, if it says, it will typically say if there is an internship or co-op, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't have that. So it's important to look in the title of the program. If it says co-op, then that is a co-op program, or in the description when you're reading about the program and they talk about an internship or they mention that that's a component. But if that is not mentioned, then that will not be part of the program. Someone was asking about a mistake in cost for family members greater than 7. I think they were talking about this slide. So yes, so that's so if there's more than 7 people, it's an additional like 5,559 for each additional
Yeah.
person. Yeah. So that's not total, that's like per additional person. So it would be like, so if you have 7, you have to have 54,611, then you have to have 8, add this on. If you have 9, add this on times 2. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
That
how
makes
that.
sense, Carrie. Yeah, thanks.
Da, da, da. So I'm just scrolling through these. We do, as someone's asking about if we have a presentation about for admission, we do. That's coming up in November. Let me just grab the link for that 1 second. I will pop that in the chat, and then that will go through details about how to put together your application. We'll talk a bit more about like reaching out to supervisors and things. So let me just pop that in here 1 second. Okay, there we go. So that's that link that you can register for the application webinar. Somebody asking about proof of funds being used for living expenses after reaching Canada. No, that has to be before, because you won't be approved for a study permit without that. So that has to be before. Someone's offered admission, expected to pay a deposit in advance to be offered a visa. The only time you have to pay a deposit is if you are in a course-based program and you are applying for a study permit, because we have to issue something called a provincial attestation letter. There's a lot more info about this on our website if you want to go find out more. But if you're in a course-based program, then you do have to pay a deposit to be issued the provincial attestation letter, which then you need to apply for a study permit. But if you are not in a course-based program, so if you're in a research-based program, you do not need to pay a deposit. You still need to get the provincial attestation letter, and all of this information, you get it. So once you're offered admission, we send you information about how to get your attestation letter, and then how to apply for the study permit. So there will be, if you get accepted, there will be more info for that. But so that's a quick answer about that. If you get a scholarship, yeah, the scholarship, the deposit for the PAL it's regardless of if you have a scholarship or not. But again, that's only if you are in a research or a course-based program. So somebody challenging to pay the application fee because of financial situation. And then I would potentially caution you about really looking at what if you were to find the finances to pay the application fee, even if you were to get in and get a scholarship, are you going to be able to show that you have that additional $20,000 or $20,635 Canadian over and above to get that study permit? Because that could be a barrier. That could be a barrier as well. So as I mentioned, we don't offer application fee waivers. But if that application fee is challenging, I would really encourage you to maybe go through some of the financial requirements a little bit more to understand that even if you were to get a scholarship, would it still be financially doable for you? Heidi, I don't know if you have anything else to add in there.
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Particularly, with international students, it's really important to keep in mind what cost of living is, and that any funding that you receive is supplemental to what you already have. You should have a good base, I would say, because What we don't want happening is that you arrive here in your first term and you're like, okay, well, I can't pay for this. Then what happens? Then it's a really difficult situation to be in. We understand like having a grad degree can offer great opportunities, but you also need to make sure that it's financially viable for you to do so.
Yep, that's great point, Heidi. Someone's asking about housing for PhD students with families. We do have that. I will say it's in quite high demand. So there's currently a waiting list. So if you are accepted, you'll be on that waiting list. I have no idea how long it is. Often you can be on it for quite a while. So if you are coming with a family, you should be prepared to look for off-campus housing for your family. They already have an acceptance letter for January 2026. Congratulations. Can they apply for the CGRSM as an international student now?
Correct. The CGRSM is only available for domestic students.
All right. If you have questions about if your program requires a supervisor or not, please reach out to the program coordinator. So when you're on our future graduate students website and you see that big list of programs and you click through to a program, there's always going to be a program contact on there. And that's the person that you want to reach out to for specific questions like that. Do TOEFL scores affect scholarship considerations at all, Heidi?
No,
Okay.
no, we don't look at those.
All right. This is more of an admissions question. Um, do, do, do. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through. Someone's asking about offers of admission after you apply. It can take up to a couple of months sometimes to get an offer of admission. It really just depends on the program, but it isn't going to be like it's not instantly after, so you do have to wait a little bit. Mhm. Yeah, lots of questions about supervisors here, which if you want to sign up for the admissions session, that would be a better one because we can sort of answer a few more of your questions there. But I will also say there isn't going to be any magic formula or anything to find a supervisor. Some of it is just persistence. And as I said, leveraging any network that you have or really making sure that when you're reaching out, you're including like it's a really great message and you're including a lot of really good and important information and aligning research interests. But yeah, unfortunately, some programs need that ahead of time, but some programs don't. And again, if you're not sure, reaching out to that program coordinator because some programs you can find a supervisor after you're admitted. So make sure you're reaching out to that program coordinator with those specific questions.
Carrie, maybe I can just bring up a question. I
Yeah.
think it's been added twice about not having a cumulative GPA from a university in Malaysia, and if they're still eligible. I think we've got lots of experience, our admissions team, scholarship teams, looking at transcripts that have different grading scales from all over the world. So some don't have cum GPA, some have first class standing, different grading scales. So whether your institution doesn't have a specific cum GPA, we've got other ways of looking at the transcript and determining eligibility as well.
Okay. Thanks, Heidi. I think that covers most of the funding related questions here. So again, if there was something about funding, or if you do have another question that's not about funding and maybe you can't wait until the admissions webinar, please reach out to me. My email's up on the screen there, and then I will direct you where you need to go or try to answer your question. But again, thank you for coming today. I hope that we were able to share some information that's useful and helpful to you. And I think both Heidi and myself wish you the best in your application, and everyone here is we try and be as supportive as possible, and want to make sure that you are successful in both your application and then once you're here for grad studies, hopefully. So do you have anything else you want to add, Heidi?
Nope, that's great. We're here to
Awesome.
support. Let us know if you have questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye for now.